Members, please be seated.
Good evening. Could I ask everyone to note the fire safety evacuation instructions? There are no fire drills planned for this evening. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, please leave the building via the nearest exit and make your way to the assembly point located at the Market Car Park, adjacent to the Civics building. I would like to remind you to please switch off your mobile phones or turn them to silent. Please note that the meeting will be live streamed, where the proceedings are capable of being repeat viewing. Members of the public can record the meeting, providing this does not disturb the meeting. This can be done from the seats reserved for this purpose. Therefore, please raise your hand clearly if you intend to take photographs or film this evening. Thank you. Please ensure that you speak clearly into the microphone and ensure you switch off your microphone when you have finished speaking. If you are seated in the public area of the chamber, it's likely that your image will be captured by the recording cameras and result in your image being part of the broadcast. Finally, if members are for any reason not present for the whole debate on an item, you should consider and seek advice as necessary on whether it would be appropriate for you to vote on that item. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, will you please stand for the Reverend Glenn Mansfield, if you're able to.
Well, good evening. I'm going to begin with a couple of verses from Paul's letter to the Romans, chapter 13. Paul writes, "Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God." And in verse 4, "For the one in authority is God's servant for your good." It's interesting how Paul writes to the Romans to tell them that actually all authorities, which includes this council, is established by God and recognised by God as a delegation of his authority, and also that those who serve on the council are God's servants, and they do so for the good of the community. So that's what I'm going to pray this evening. So let's pray. So, Father, we give you thanks for this council, for the councillors and all the support staff. We give you thanks for the service that they offer through their time and their efforts. We pray, Lord, that they would act for the good of the people in this district. Pray they'd be wise in their decision making. Pray they'd be kind and patient with one another. And may your blessing rest upon the Rochford district. And now the Lord's Prayer, and if you'd like to join in, you're welcome to do so. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, for ever and ever. Amen.
Members, please be seated. Reverend Glenn, you can stay as long as you like, as you usually do. Thank you. So, good evening, members. Before we formally move to the agenda, can I just remind members and anyone viewing the meeting of the provisions that exist in council procedural rules for points of order and personal explanations. A point of order. A member may raise a point of order at any time. The chair will hear them immediately. A point of order may only relate to any alleged breach of these council rules of procedure or the law. The member must indicate the rule or law and the way in which he/she considers it has been broken. The ruling of the chair on the matter will be final. Personal explanation. A member may make a personal explanation at any time. A personal explanation may only relate to some material part of an earlier speech by the member which may appear to have been misunderstood in the present debate. The ruling of the Chair on the admissibility of a personal explanation will be final. So thank you very much for that. We're moving on now to item 1 on your agendas, which is apologies for absence. I have Councillor Andrew Cross, Councillor Richard Linden, Councillor Richard Lambourne, Councillor Bob Milne, Councillor Ian Wilson, Councillor Stuart Wilson, Councillor Vilma Wilson, and I have a note that Councillor Michael Carter may be late or not turn up in the end, but we'll see how we go on that. Thank you very much. Are there any other apologies, please? No, thank you. Moving to item 2. We have minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of February 2025. I'm going to ask Paul Birkinshaw to speak and clarify about something to do with this, these minutes, please.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. Just to apologise to members, the appendix to the minutes in the version that was circulated to members was unclear, and on page 10.4 some pictures in the report covered some text. Those were correct on the website, and a revised pack was emailed to members earlier today, so hopefully members are in a position to the minutes, but just to apologise to the council for those errors.
So bearing in mind, members, are these minutes agreed, please? Thank you very much indeed. So we're going to item 3, declarations of interest. Members have received an email from the monitoring officer providing advice on declarations of interest at this meeting. Essex County councillors, in light of that advice, I can first ask if any councillors that are also Essex County councillors would like to declare an interest. I'll do the next statement after. So we've got Councillor Lorraine Shaw. Would you speak, please?
Thank you. As an Essex County Councillor, I would like to say that I've got other registrable interest as an ECC councillor, but I will remain in the meeting. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For item 6, as an Essex County Councillor, other registrable interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hoy.
Again, for item 6, as an Essex County Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Mike Steptoe, please.
Chairman, as Essex County Councillor for item 6, but also for as a parish councillor for item 11.
Thank you. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did it myself. Just to let everyone know, we have a Madam Chair sitting there, not a chairman. Please address her so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stanley. So then I would like to go forward on town parish councillors. I personally would like to declare other registrable interests in agenda item 11 as a town parish, a town councillor, but I don't consider the nature of this interest and the business to be transacted necessitates me to withdraw from the meeting. Can I ask if any other town or parish councillors would like to make the same declaration? And if so, please could you raise your hands? Lovely, thank you. You can put your hands down. So, members, we're going to item 4, which is announcements. So, I'm going to do mine first. Since I updated you last, I've been attending a variety of events, openings, engaging with our local community, the children of our local community, and the parish councils. In between time, I have hosted a charity fundraiser quiz in support of my chosen charities, Changing Pathways and the Mushroom Theatre. Just like to say a really big thank you to everybody that supported us and them, and were able to raise £1,200 for these amazing local charities. I joined the Essex Chairs at Chelmsford Cathedral supporting Essex County Council's annual church service. Equally, it was great to support the High Sheriff Awards, where over £75,000 was awarded to various and amazing charities in the Essex area, in particular Chaos Youth Centre in Rochford and the Bar and Bus, who support us in our district. It was brilliant to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the Commonwealth with a flag-raising ceremony held at the Mill and Arts Centre. This event was attended by councillors and chairs of our parish councils, reflecting our collective commitment to unity and heritage, supported by my amazing chaplain, Glenn Mansfield, who led us in prayers, and I had the privilege of delivering the King's speech. Last week, I was really delighted to be asked to open the new facilities at Wallasey Island RSPB Reserve. These facilities are unique and are the first of its kind in the Rochford district. A compostable toilet facility, which was provided with the UK SPF funding and lots of hard work from the volunteers of the RSPB. This amazing new facility makes this beautiful reserve even more accessible and desirable to visit. I attended the Rochford Heritage Workshop at the WI Hall. I had the pleasure of meeting members of the public and supporting the Cultural Engine programme for the Rochford district with Giles Toffield and his team. This initiative aims to explore and celebrate the places, landmarks and traditions and events that define Rochford, and again it's been supported by the UK SPF Fund. Yesterday I was immensely happy to attend SESMA, which is the South East Essex Schools Music Association, who have been supporting our amazing young people through music and song for many decades, and who work tirelessly and voluntarily to provide this into our community. It was really lovely to see Rayleigh Primary School and St Teresa's from Rochford, their students so animated and delighted to perform for all of us. And this morning, I hosted Riverside Junior School from Holbridge into our council chamber, where they brought their questions and asked these of myself, Councillor Stanley and Councillor Booth. They were all incredibly animated and enthralled by the experience, and they asked some very, very interesting questions. They were equally delighted to be able to use the gavel on their way out. As you know, our civic dinner is on the 28th of March. I'm delighted to report this is completely sold out and we have people on our waiting list, which is marvellous news for our amazing charities and, of course, for the Mill and Arts Events Centre, where we are showcasing how functional this place can be for our community. If you would like to make a donation to these charities, please contact Oksana, our civic officer, or indeed, if you would like to make donations for the raffle, please feel free to drop them into the Mill and Art Event Centre, the Civic Suite, or the Rochford Hub in the library there. Finally, we will be celebrating the 80th anniversary of VE Day. This is on Thursday, the 8th of May, in a ceremony concluding with the lighting of our amazing beacon outside the Mill and Arts Events Centre at 9:30 p.m, which will take place simultaneously throughout the country. You are all invited to attend this civic event with our amazing community. Thank you very much indeed. So does the leader of the council wish to make an announcement? Councillor James Newport.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No announcement.
Do any of the chairpersons of any policy committees or the Audit and Governance Committee wish to make any announcements? No? Okay. And does the Head of Paid Services, Jonathan Stevenson, wish to make an announcement?
Madam Chair, if I could make an announcement, please. Members, I'd like to inform you of the up-and-coming LGA, Local Government Association Corporate Peer Challenge. The Council will welcome a team of members and officers' peers in the week commencing the 31st of March, as some of you are already aware, to undertake a corporate peer challenge for Rochester District Council. The Corporate Peer Challenge forms a key part of the LGA's new improvement and assurance framework for local government and is underpinned by the principles of sector-led improvement to support continuous improvement and assurance across the local government sector. The Corporate Peer Challenge is also recognised assisting councils to meet their best value duty by having one Corporate Peer Challenge at least every 5 years. By bringing together political and managerial leadership through the use of member and officer peers, a peer challenge provides robust, strategic and credible challenge and support to the council. Each CPC, Corporate Peer Challenge, covers 5 core elements: local priorities and outcomes, organisational and place leadership, governance and culture, financial planning and management, capacity for improvement. Following a Corporate Peer Challenge, a report outlining the key findings and recommendations from the peer team will be shared with the council. In the spirit of openness and transparency, councils are required to publish a report alongside an action plan within 3 months of the Corporate Peer Challenge, and this is intended to be reported to full council in the near future. A key element of the Corporate Peer Challenge is engagement with members and political groups, and the relevant members should have received details about this prior to today's announcement. If not, please, happy to speak to any member after the meeting today or following the meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stevenson. So we're going to move on to item 5 now, members, which is public and member questions. We have one question from Councillor Mrs. Daniel Belton. It's on page 5.1 of your agenda pack. And this question is referred to Councillor Jim Cripps, Chairman of the Planning Policy Committee. Councillor Belton, would you like to read your question out, please?
Thank you. I note the Council has been awarded £70,000 funding to conduct a review of our Greenbelt. Given the administration's previous support of the term grey belt within the MPPF consultation, can the Chairman of the Planning Policy Committee give me assurances that this Council will defend our Greenbelt land from this ambiguous term when trying to find sites to meet the revised housing allocation of circa 15,000 properties? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cripps, would you like to respond, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Evening, members. Thank you for the question, Councillor Belton. Please excuse my back because I have to use the microphone. Sorry about that. I will endeavour now to give you some assurances by virtue of the process that we are required to use in the local plan, which is an evidence-based approach. Looking back a little way to the recent past, we responded to questions in the MPPF consultation. There were 6 specific questions on the grey belt matter, and we responded with 10 paragraphs. Those paragraphs reflected concerns about building in previously developed land. It raised some technical points. It also commented on the lack of definition of grey belt or grey field. And ultimately, we asked for more clarifications to be coming forward in terms of this subject because we didn't think it was definitive enough not to be misinterpreted. Looking now at the current situation, I can tell you that at the end of last week, we received the clarifications from the MPPF via the vehicle of the MPPG. That's the National Planning Policy Guidance document, which is a supplement to the MPPF. That is with officers for interpretation because it covers all subjects, not just this particular subject. Looking forward, the process will now move on to do the Greenbelt review exercise. You will be aware that we've been recently awarded £70,000 from the government for the purpose of that. Regardless of grey belt, this will require all green belt to be put through this process. After that, any decisions on the Greenbelt allocation will be firstly approved via the Planning Policy Committee, which is a cross-party committee, and subsequently it would need to be approved by full council, which again is a cross-party matter. We, myself and the planners, are well aware of the potential Trojan horse in terms of the grey belt, and we will be looking out hard at that. But this has to take its long-winded and extensive work function now in intimate detail. We, as a metropolitan green belt district, means that this means a lot of work, this green belt review. That is where we're at. I can't make any promises, but I do hope you're assured that the evidence-based approach that we're going to do, involving all of the members, eventually will satisfy you that we are doing this in the correct way and the way we're required to do for the local plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cripps. Councillor Belton, would you like to ask a supplementary?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councillor Cripps. Thank you for that answer, very detailed. Can you confirm how the expression of interest into a new town that's been signed by Councillor Newport for an additional 10,000 properties is going to impact the amount of green belt that we may need to use, given that those 10,000 properties will not count towards our 15,000 housing target? Thank you.
Councillor Cripps, if you'd like to respond. No? Okay. Are you raising a point of order, Councillor Newport?
I'm happy to raise the point of order, Madam Chair. The supplementary question must be related to the question first asked, or the answer to that question.
Okay. So we're suggesting that it is relevant, and we're going to say that Councillor Cripps, you can answer as you wish at the moment, or you can reply in writing. It's entirely up to you.
Chair, I think it's quite a long way from the original point on the grey belt, so I would like to respond in writing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, members, we're moving on now to item 6, the Local Government Reorganisation Interim Plan. The report begins on page 6.1 of your agendas. Please note that the following, a request regarding voting on the recommendations, I intend to allow separate votes on the recommendations. The Chief Executive will now provide an introduction to the report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As members are aware, on the 5th of February 2025, the Minister of State for Local Government and English Devolution, Jim McMahon, OBE and MP, wrote to the leaders of Essex County Council, Southend-on-Sea City Council and Thurrock Council to advise that he had agreed the request for Greater Essex to join the Devolution Priority Programme. This is one of 6 areas selected in England. On the same day, the Minister wrote also to the leaders of all 15 councils in Greater Essex, in which he issued a formal invitation to develop proposals for reorganisation of the current administrative arrangements across the county. A copy of the letter is attached at Appendix 1 to this report. The Minister also wrote to all county councils and district councils in 2-tier areas across the country. This is 184 councils and nearly 60% of local government in England, inviting them also to develop proposals for reorganisation of local government. This letter to Essex leaders follows the intention of government as set out in the English Devolution White Paper published in December 2024 to replace the two-tier system of local government with a single tier of local government, the system currently in Essex. The letter set out an expectation that leaders of all authorities would work collaboratively and productively, and also required that an interim plan to be developed in line with the guidance set out in the letter and submitted to government on or before the 21st of March 2025. Government will not be making any decisions on the interim plan, but requires that the final proposals be submitted to government by the 26th of September 2025, so that government can then make decisions regarding how local government reorganisation will be implemented, and elections to the new shadow authority councils can take place as expected in May 27 for a vesting day of the new authorities that may be established in May 2028. The report in front of you presents the interim plan as Appendix 2, which has been developed through meetings of the Essex Leaders and Chief Execs Forum, which the Leader of the Council, the Deputy Leader and myself have attended. The report provides further information regarding the interim plan, its purpose and content. Going forward, the 15 councils will continue to work to develop the September submission in line with the guidance set out using the Essex Leaders and Chief Exec Forum and established working groups. It will be necessary for the work to be based on a robust evidence base in line with the government's criteria to support the final submission. At this early stage, however, there is a majority of council leaders, including Rochford, 10 out of 15 of the councils, which have indicated support in principle of the creation of 5 unitary councils across Greater Essex, which is considered creates the optimum balance of scale but preserves local democracy and cultural identity. Myself and the Leader continue to keep members updated and will bring forward reports to full council as appropriate ahead of the 26th of September deadline. All councils within Essex are taking this interim plan and report through their governance process ahead of the 21st of March, so we can agree the plan and hopefully present a united approach to government with our submission of this plan, through recognising there may be different options presented to government by the time we get to September. Madam Chair, I'm happy to take any questions, if possible, about the report. Thank you.
But I will at this point invite the Leader, Councillor James Newport, to move the recommendations for us, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to move the recommendations on 6.1 with a slight amendment. Madam Chair, after listening to members, we'd like to amend recommendations 4 to say to support in principle the development of a 5 unitary model for Greater Essex, and deleting the rest of the words in that recommendation. So happy to propose recommendations R1 to R4 on page 6.1. Thank you.
Lovely. And Councillor Hoy, are you seconding this motion, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be seconding that motion.
Would you like to reserve your right?
And could I reserve my right to speak later?
Certainly. So, members, we're going to open this up for debate now, please. Councillor FD.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just got a number of questions and observations. Reference page 4.2, reference 3.8. The guidance permits for more than one proposal to be submitted to the Secretary of State. So why are we putting our name and logo to something that, in my opinion, is destined to fail? And I'll explain why next. 6.15 page, that is, paragraph 4. It states for guiding principles to aim for a population of 500,000 or more. Let's see recommendation 4. To support in principle 5 unitary authorities with a Greater Essex population at 1.88 million at the moment, is divided by 5 equals 360,000. This falls well short and will make the decision to support 5 unitary authorities unsustainable. So why support a proposal which is fundamentally flawed? Item 7, and that's mine done there, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor FD. Councillor Newport, James Newport, would you like to respond, or would you like the Jonathan Stevenson to reply?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I will pick up on the red herring of the 500,000. Last week, myself, Councillor Hoy, attended the DCN conference where Jim McMahon was there, and he said that we did not have to put proposals in of 500,000. They were happy to consider smaller unitaries. We've heard that directly from the Minister. Also, we've heard it from many Labour councillors that have direct connections into government, and they have also said that that 500 is not hard and fast. So we are actually allowed to put in, and they will seriously be considered at a smaller, around 350,000 population.
Thank you very much, Councillor James Newport. Jonathan, would you like to respond further?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to add, so the government have obviously put some criteria, but they've talked about it being guidance. They've also talked about with regard to looking at current district boundaries. So the challenge would be to carve up Essex into anything without not using the boundaries as well. But the Minister was at the conference last week, and there was 4 councillors at that conference here, and that he talked about it being an average figure and making sure that there's a lot more factors than just population, local connection, and areas like that. So it would really be, and he was hoping that if there was consensus in Essex, then they wouldn't need to intervene. Obviously, he doesn't want to draw the lines on the map. He prefer that Essex councillors do that. So that came from the Minister as well. It's not very helpful having the 500,000, having that those discussions as well. But it was reported also in the MJ as well that is an average figure reported by that as well. So, but yes, quite right in the paper that's what it says. So, but it was confirmed by the Minister last week that the average. So there might be councils of 700,000. There might be councils of 350,000. So going forward. Sorry, Madam Chair and Councillor FD. Yeah, you referenced about one submission. So there is an option to put more than one in at this moment in time. This isn't a binding point in the process. At some point in September, we'll have to come to a conclusion in Essex across the system to decide what Essex looks like with proper evidence, proper detail. We've had about 5 weeks with the governance process of like tonight to actually come to a conclusion, but to get consensus in Essex at the moment is difficult. So we're putting forward a proposal, as you can see in there, one proposal that talks about a majority of leaders and potentially councils supporting no less than 5, so smaller councils. The other councils haven't made a decision at this point. They could in the future support 5, or they could support less, where there might then be 2 submissions to government in September or more.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Belton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I was also at the conference, and Jim McMahon did talk about averages, but who wants to be on the smaller side of an average when we're talking about devolution and local government reform? It certainly would have been helpful to know that there was an amendment coming, because that would have given us all some other food for thought. So to spring that on us now is unhelpful. But I'm going to speak to the report that I was presented and the recommendations that I was presented, and I'll consider the fact that one of them has been proposed to be changed as we go through. So firstly, I find it surprising at all that despite this council only a few weeks ago sending a clear message that we don't support the white paper, that our leader would sign up to an approach, an undemocratic approach, that we have not given agreement to. We understand needing to be involved in the conversations, but 5 other councils have already not agreed with this paper. If I wasn't clear before, we're not happy. Our residents are not happy. This is not something our residents have asked for. It's not something our businesses have asked for. Speaking to the interim plan and the fact that you talk of the best deal for Rochford, I'd like to know from Councillor Newport how being part of the smallest unitary by far would get us a good deal. Now, I recognise that's been changed, but that was the thought process that produced this report. So at some point, Councillor Newport thought being part of a 320,000 big authority was a good deal for Rochford. How would we possibly ensure we're getting best value for money And if devolution does go ahead at the same time as local government reform, how would we get positive attention of the Mayor for finances or services? The reality is we wouldn't. We will just become the dumping ground for Southend's housing targets, saying goodbye to our green belt, which is already at huge risk. I would also like to know how we came to the conclusion of Castle Point and Southend. Now, I recognise that's being changed, but it's in this report, so there was obviously a thought process, and I'd like to understand it. How did that become the preferred options? Where are the workings out, and where are the alternative options? Was joining with Malden, Chelmsford and Brentwood, for example, considered? Was using parliamentary boundaries even looked at? Why 5 unitaries when clearly 3 or 4 meet the requirements of Jim McMahon's plan more favourably? Indeed, at the DCN conference, he said he would consider smaller or larger authorities where it works for the county, but even then, the lowest figure he mentioned was 350,000, yet our leader still put forward a report that said 320. More unitaries equal more jobs, and that didn't seem to be the preferred option. Cost saving was the name of the game. 5 councils make no sense when the numbers are so unbalanced, and our new council, no doubt Greater Southend City or such like, would be notably smaller than the others, and therefore underrepresented compared to others in the county. Page 6.5 of the report refers to a meeting with MPs at Westminster. What it fails to mention is that only 6 of 18 Essex MPs attended that meeting. Of those, 3 voted against the plans, including Mark Francois. 2 voted in favour, both Labour, and the other one didn't even stay for the vote. Moving on to money, page 6.33 determines the next cost in this process is £5 to £7 million, just to produce a plan that may or may not be accepted. Rochford's share of that is around 250,000, of which 200k is being proposed from the 24-25 underspend. Has that been approved in the budget last month? It's disappointing that almost the entire amount of money raised by increasing the council tax by 2.95% in your budget is going to go on this piece of work. More concerning, though, where money is concerned, is the debt. We have none and are proud of that. Most councils aren't so lucky. Southend has £350 million of debt. Castle Point has less but isn't debt-free. Is it right that the residents of Rochford District pick up the interest on those debts of others? Treasury certainly haven't made it clear how debt will be handled, and I am not comfortable saddling the residents I represent with the debts of others. To conclude, people keep saying that this is happening whether we like it or not, and that we need a seat at the table, despite that table being 30 people from a population of 1.9 million. But I disagree. This Labour Trojan horse to deliver mass housing needs billions to deliver, and government do not have it. When it comes to the final decisions later this year, Treasury are going to have a tough time. And if we in Essex, and more importantly Rochford, continue to show there is not united support for local government reform or devolution at this pace, it's highly possible that we will be taken off of the priority programme, giving everyone a real chance to scrutinise the options and not just a handful of people around a metaphorical table, and to really ensure the best outcome for our green belt, our environment, and most importantly, our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Belton. Councillor John Mason.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to run through the 4 recommendations that were published, like Councillor Belton and others. I haven't prepared for a proposal to change R4, and I'm not sure that what's to be added would actually change the perspective on what I'm going to say anyway. Looking at R1, there are 3 words which attract me to vote for this. And these are, and I hope we all work towards this, secure the best outcome for Rochford District. R2 and R3. I can agree to RDC being cited as a contributor to the interim plan, as at para 4.1. But the recommendations at R2 and R3 go further that I can agree to at this stage. In particular, the interim plan doesn't include any proposals on debt, either from the government or from elsewhere. And I'm also concerned about new statute which may come soon to sequester assets, unless challenged with proposals right now. R4. I can't vote for this because there is no weighted modelling from the perspective of just RDC with comparative alternatives of different unitary structures, or indeed a detailed analysis of a specific merger with Southend and Castle Point to create a new unitary. And I believe that one of my colleagues in the Rochford District Residents Group will be suggesting there is an alternative model to that put forward in the original R4. Thank you, Chairman, and Madam Chair, and thank you so much for agreeing for these recommendations to be taken separately. Thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. Councillor Ian Ward, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've listened very carefully to those who have spoken. I wish to look again at the recommendations, and this is not repetition in any way, shape or form. In R1, it does quote, "This council recognises the proposals from government for local government reform and devolution requested by the upper tier authorities in Greater Essex and will respond in a manner designed to secure the best outcome for Rochford District, given the framework and structure of the process." Coming on to Councillor, thank you, Councillor Mason, my apologies, Councillor Mason. Yeah, the above recommendation, now, the term designed to secure the best outcome for Rochford District, the above recommendation is totally disingenuous in relation to the report as a whole. I think all councillors and residents will be in total agreement that the concept that the outcome outlined within this report should secure the best outcome for Rochford District. Unfortunately, it does nothing of the sort. I will examine this statement, this one recommendation in detail to understand its total irrelevance. This council recognises the proposals from government for local government reform and devolution. That's an important statement. I ask, have I been asleep for the last month or so? Or did we vote in council to reject this white paper? I have the letter of the 18th of February 2025 from our CEO to the Minister of Housing stating we do not support these proposals. So this first statement is in serious error and contradictory to this council's wishes. 3.7. The natural partners of the council are considered to be our near neighbours, Southend-on-Sea City Council, Castle Point District Council, and of course ourselves, and so members are asked to support in principle the working assumption that these three authorities would combine to create one larger unitary authority for South East Essex. This particular geography and configuration is supported by the council for several reasons. Now the statement, this particular geography and configuration is supported by the council for several reasons. I have no recollection of this particular geographical configuration being discussed at council or voted on as the preferred configuration. So how can this statement be supported by the council be correct? In fact, it is not supported by this council by virtue of never being discussed or voted on. The bullet point, it represents a sensible natural geographic area. It does, but that is all it does. Even though we would have an airport and a strategic North Sea port, which this report fails to mention, together with good rail links and seriously overcapacity road links to London, the total area fails far short of what is considered to be a sustainable authority. The government considers that a sustainable authority
should be looked at as a population of 500,000. I know this has been discussed previously. Residents, to enable a stable tax base to support all the services required. The proposed geographic area falls far short of that number to be economically viable. Now, Appendix 2, 6.28, as set out as the Essex proposal suggests, that it would be possible to have a unitary authority, one of the others that would be sustainable.
Councillor Ward, you
with
have
a
30
population
seconds left.
of 3,200. This seems to be a convenient figure which seems to give credence to a possible Southend City, Castle Point, Rochford District single unitary. These assumptions as yet have not been verified by PwC. Evaluating the importance of scale in proposals for local government reorganisation, their quote, "It is that evidence that the government have used to base the 500,000 figure on as an ideal unitary size, and not the 320,000 figure that this paper is considering accepting." Appendix 2...
Can you wind up now, please, Councillor? I'm giving you a little bit of leeway here as well.
May I just continue?
Just wind it up now, please.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah. With the fact of the Grant Thornton involvement with looking at everything, as it is apparent from the whole report, we are being expected to accept its contents and decide based on the evidence within. This report fails in so many areas with so many false assumptions, and it is an insult to both members and the residents who elected us to protect the interests of Rochford District, especially the financial and economic outcomes. In conclusion, this paper is being presented under the illusion that it has been supported in its entirety by this council in one form or another, which is another false assumption. Therefore, I can't support any of the recommendations therein.
Thank you, Councillor Ward, very much. Councillor Joanne McPherson, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just one point, Councillor Ward. When the fuel allowance was removed, we all agreed to write to the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, asking her to reinstate it. Did she? She did not. The relevance is writing to the Minister around the white paper. Although that is how we feel, do we actually think that that's going to be changed? Okay. Yes. But what? So the journey to, and I too have written a script, so apologies, but it is a shorter one. The journey to local government reorganisation and devolution has been proposed by the government. But the choice was not ours. Let's make that clear. The fast track option, which was a decision made by Essex County Council, Southend Council and Thurrock Council, again, the choice was not ours. This was not in our power to change. Our council had no say. Our residents had no say. This has been one of the worst things that I think I've ever endured as a councillor, if I'm totally honest, because this is going to be a huge change to our district council. But I've got two choices. I can bury my head in my hands and wish to deny this is happening to our council, or do what I have been elected to do and do my best for the interests of my residents. I'm not happy. I'm not happy at all that this has been forced upon us. More so that we've been forced to fast track, leaving us little time for planning. But we are forced to engage so we can do the best and get the best deal available for our residents. I fully support the recommendations and the change to recommendation 4, which I don't mind saying that I asked for. And that was supported by other members. I understand the need to proceed with the interim plan. If we don't have a seat at the table, then what voice will we have for our residents? To say on something that will undoubtedly be forced upon us. The previous government to the existing government was going down this route of devolution. So even if they change their mind, is this going to come in the future? But we must keep these conversations going with all of our neighbours. I am proud that Rochford is a well-run, financially stable, low-crime council. And we've got a lot to offer to our neighbours. This is our selling point in discussions, which we must use to our advantage to secure the best deal for our residents. Please remember, members, this is an interim plan. This does not commit ourselves. Numbers of unitaries may change, but without it, we will probably be exempt ourselves from further conversations. It's a starting point. Why we're keeping all the options open. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And could I now ask Councillor Nick Booth, please? I've got it.
Sorry, Madam.
You're doing a point of order?
Yes, just that I asked 5 questions within my speech and none of them have been answered. I'm happy to wait and clarify them or hand them over. There was
we
five
actually took
clear,
it more of a statement.
No, there was 5 clear questions, but I'm happy to wait. I just wanted to note it.
Yeah, Councillor Booth, would you like to speak, please?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to declare an interest. I'm not a county councillor, and it looks like I might never have that opportunity. Now, whether one fights kicking and screaming about that, I'm still unsure of. But I've listened with great interest to my more esteemed and experienced colleagues this evening. But as I've pondered on the paper and the report for tonight, I'm beginning to form the view that it may be better for us to join Brentwood, Chelmsford and Morden. This is in part due to all the effort that has gone into building the partnership with Brentwood. In addition, I believe geographically and culturally, there is more in common than with Southend, Basildon and Castlepoint. Moreover, such a partnership with Brentwood, Morden and Chelmsford would achieve, and I remain now confused, whether the 500,000 is a holy grail or not. But I certainly agree with the comments of Councillor Belton that if we're only hovering around the 350,000, where there's other councils that are offering 700,000, I think we are going to fall to the bottom of that pile for acceptance. This then logically would leave Thurrock, Basildon, Castlepoint and Southend to form a kind of Thames Gateway Authority of over 500,000, giving such an area, I believe, a clear geographical and cultural identity. It would also mean moving from 5 to 4 authorities in Essex, which surely must be argued is a better use of public money. Reorganisation is never cheap. It is never painless. It takes a while to feed through. So I think we should be doing all that we can to make sure it is as effective and as efficient as possible. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm going to come back to Councillor Belton now. Please, can you clarify the 5 questions that you wanted answering, and I'll get either the leader to answer you or Jonathan Stevenson. Thank you.
Thank you, much appreciated. So in the order they came out in the speech, how is being in the smallest authority a good deal? How will we ensure a fair deal from the Mayor if we're in the smallest authority? How were Southend City Council and Castlepoint Borough Council determined as the best option? Were other options considered? And is the budget of 200,000 that's proposed in this report, has that been secured or does that need to be agreed? Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor James Newport, would you like to reply or shall I ask Jonathan Stevenson to take that? Mr Stevenson, can you do that for us, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I tried to get all those questions down, so please bear with me. So with regard to smallest authority, and I can only go on what's there, so there is only actually 11 authorities in the country that are over 500,000 currently, and at present there is no evidence of smaller or bigger is better. So at the moment we're at the early point of the decision making that there needs to be evidence to look at that. So there is very high performing small authorities in the country, and there's very high performing large authorities, but actually some very underperforming and councils that have gone into debt that are small and big as well. So that at the moment, the evidence base has not been built enough to quantify whether that big is better or small is better. And I don't think we'll ever get to that point, I think. So just on that basis. With regard to the mayoral voting rights, each unitary authority, in the white paper currently, the voting rights are based on the 3 upper tier authorities. With the new establish of whatever structure it is for local government, whether it's 1, 2, 3 or 4 or 5, in Essex, each authority will have a single vote with the mayor with the mayor. So it wouldn't matter around size of authority. Obviously, you'd be representing a smaller constituency or a larger constituency, but the actual voting rights for those leaders who are part of those unitary, based on the current arrangements that's already established, would have 1 vote regardless of size. And with regard to that, with regard to, I think, finance as well, there was a question around that. I'll let David Dickinson perhaps respond to that point within the paper. There was a couple of other things you brought up, which I just want to pick up, as said about debt as well. I think it was, I don't know if it was yours, Councillor FT, actually picked up about around debt. But just to pick up on debt, the government hasn't made a decision on debt. There is a large amount of debt within the system of Essex, regardless of just Thurrock's debt, because a lot of people, when they talk about debt, Surrey County Council are going ahead of everybody, and they've got to look at their debt at the moment. I think it's around 5 billion worth of debt in Surrey that needs to be looked at. Some of it's asset-backed debt, but they've got a lot of debt. Their proposal that we're taking in September has got to go on the 9th of May to government. So there will be some, hopefully, precedent set around debt, and we can understand that, because like any authority, who wants to take on someone else's debt? So obviously government will need to look at that to make it viable. I think I've missed at least one question, Councillor Belton, sorry. Okay, yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councillor Belton. So actually, Southend and Castle Point have put in their reports that are going later this week, I think tomorrow and Thursday, that a similar recommendation. The reason it was put in the report is obviously to allow members to debate. The leader has obviously made the decision to look at taking that, removing that. There is some logic, but not the only option, because options in the submission to government, there is no lines drawn on maps in the submission to government. So 5 could be made up of a number of options, but obviously Castle Point and Southend will debate the same as us, and they might take it out or they might agree to work. In the end, the government will decide how many unitary authorities will be created, and the areas and the geographies they'll be. In the end, it'll be down to the shadow authority to work on what those boundaries will be. So it was put in the paper, it's now been taken out. There is some logic back on that based on 5 unitaries, but you can look to make 5 unitaries in other ways. Again, at this early days, is who would want to work with us and who wouldn't want to work with us as well. There's a view coming from the room, from some, that we might want to work with other authorities. It won't be our choice on how the system is created in Essex, because if we all don't want to work with each other, we won't be able to create a system for Essex. So we're hoping there is some consensus that gets us there. Otherwise, it will be the Minister drawing the lines on the map for us. So.
Thank you. David Dickinson, would you like to take that other answer up, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Currently, thank you. The figures are estimates. As the 5 to 7.5 million, they're quite high-level estimates. It's not in the budget, but as part of the outturn, there's an underspend currently being forecast, and the proposal will be to allocate that when we get a bit more detail around it. But currently, the estimate's about 250,000 that would be required, but that would just be to take us to September this year.
Thanks, Mr. Dickinson. And now can I ask the leader, because you would like to respond?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, members, I want to pick up on the first thing, which is really, to be honest, quite irritating. And it's Councillor Belton's comment about I've signed the council up to something. Well, I absolutely haven't signed the council up to anything. I do not have the power to do that. That is why this report is in front of you tonight, to ask members in a democratic way of we will take a vote on this. So let's be clear about this, Councillor Belton. It is not me. It is actually your party that's colluded with Labour to put us on the fast track. And you've got 2 members in your group that actually supported that at Essex County Council. So you've got them to blame, if anyone. I'll just pick up on Councillor Booth's point, Madam Chair, about other alternatives. Councillor Booth, I agree. but we have to have
I
willing
do apologise,
partners.
Councillor Newport. We're not going to wind up at the moment. What we're going to do, I've got two other speakers in the room.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I was allowing you to come in as leader around the responses to Councillor Belton's question, but I will invite you to wind up properly.
No, I want to talk to the 5 unitary model, and I want to respond to Councillor Booth as well on his proposals.
Okay.
So
you can do that in the
Councillor Booth,
you can do that in the winding up if that's okay. Sorry.
No, I think Councillor Hoy's winding up.
You are. You brought the motion. You
Okay.
brought the motion, so you've got your time to wind up quite happily. Okay, everybody okay around that? Yeah. So I'm going to now ask Councillor Simon Wotton to come in.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I can pick up firstly on a point that was made by an earlier speaker, my real dilemma in this is about us being forced to engage. I totally agree that we need to find an avenue through which we can engage, because I think that is most important in the interests of Rochford. And whilst talking about Rochford, please differentiate between the perspective in Rochford that we have and the perspective that Essex. And I think it's about a little bit of respect for the fact that people in Essex have a different perspective to those of us in Rochford. But if I come back to the very point that I wanted to start, when I read this, and let's be in absolutely no doubt that this is a remarkably similar, if not identical report, going to about 15 different councils with similar recommendations, because this is how these things have to work. But when I read this, I realised that it hadn't been Rochfordised in any way. So I scratched my head and thought, was I dreaming? Did we have a meeting to talk about this? So I just dug out the extraordinary council meeting on the 11th of February. And that said, quite clearly, the council resolved to confirm it does not support Labour's English devolution white paper. And it went on to say, the council requests that before any devolution or local government reorganisation is imposed by central government upon the residents of Rochford, the government hold a referendum to establish if there is public support. So that made it absolutely clear, in my opinion, that we didn't favour the way this was being progressed. Let us be in absolutely no doubt that the mechanism that is being drawn up is to allow our current government to concrete over this district. And that is absolutely out of the question. And I know the administration prefer to cover it up, but 25,000 homes are proposed in this district. I noticed the forced laughter on the front bench. But coming back to the recommendations, I'd like to look for evidence-based information, and that should have been in the report. This talking about, well, we can do 350,000 population, actually the mathematics just don't work out for 5. And I have to say, I question why at this stage, when we're trying to gather information, there is such a definitive view about 5 unitary authorities. That may be the case, but I haven't seen any evidence to actually support it. But I've seen some pretty mealy mouths sort of, oh, well, the minister has turned around and sort of said that he'll consider. Does that mean he'll consider the maths of dividing 1.9 million divided by 5, which actually puts everyone below the target? In this great county, let us be in absolutely no doubt that 5 authorities have not signed up for what is being proposed here. Even Essex and even Thurrock are not buying into the proposals. So there's 5 councils, to my knowledge, that haven't bought into the proposals. So in the way it's set out, you will gather, Madam Chair, I just cannot support it in the way it's proposed. And I actually think it is an insult to members in this chamber that we are given a report which is just literally copied from other authorities. I think we've got to be much more Rochfordised. We've got to think about the people and the residents of Rochford, what it does for our businesses, what it does for our tourism, what it does for our communities. So I won't be supporting any of the recommendations. I'm not going to go through because there's been other people talking about the recommendations. But if you actually read the recommendations exactly as they are, I do not understand how any one of 39 councillors can actually support any of these if they're actually thinking about the best interests of Rochford residents. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wootton. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to Councillor Matt O'Leary, Councillor Lisa Newport, then I'm going to ask Councillor Hoy he's reserved his right to speak as seconder, and then I'm going to go to the leader to wind up for us. So Councillor Matt O'Leary, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to make a longer speech, but I think I'm just going to keep it short after hearing all this howling at the moon that's going on around me. So therefore, Chair, through you, can I just ask Jonathan Stevenson, what are the potential ramifications for this council and district if tonight's recommendations are not accepted?
Thank you, Councillor O'Leary. Jonathan Stevenson, would you respond, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councillor O'Leary. So, with regard to the situation, just to clarify, all councils so far have agreed the interim report. What they haven't agreed is obviously only 10 councils or 10 leaders so far have agreed the position of 5 unitary councils. So even the councils that haven't agreed the 5 unitary councils or abstained, and no one's actually, I think today someone might have been quoted, but no one's formally put their position of any difference out there. Everybody has agreed for the interim plan to go forward, not understanding that the 5 option is an option that hasn't got enough evidence or information yet to actually consider it as a formal submission for September. If we don't, answer your question, if we don't submit as part of the interim plan, obviously to government, potentially 14 councils, because there's still councils to go, will be on the interim plan, and we won't. Again, if that is the case, we'd need to probably write to government to explain why. I know we have already written to government, and I sent the letter to Angela Rayner, or Jim McMahon, sorry, and the response has come back. I don't think our letters to government are going to change anything, but again, they could. I'm not saying we shouldn't. But if we don't support, there is a chance, quite a strong chance, is when government, MHCLG and other departments want to speak to the people that influence the plan, we won't be on there, so there's a chance that they won't want to speak to us. It doesn't mean we have to decide how many councils and who we're with, but it'll be good to support the plan, to have those conversations at least now. By September, we've got time to decide where the best place is for Rochford, how many councils and who our partners might be. But I would suggest we do be careful of this, but supporting the plan is showing our intent of working together. It doesn't say our intent that we have to have 5 councils and we have to partner with different councils. If you see in the document, it doesn't say that. In our own recommendation, yes, there is a recommendation that did say that, but that's not what's going to government. So, but again, it's really down to members to decide the best position for the council. But yes, if we don't have our logo on, there's probably a question why we didn't, and we probably do need to submit something to government to say why we didn't, outside of the letter we've already written to government quite right recently.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lisa Newport, please.
Thank you, Chair, but Councillor O'Leary stole my thunder. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Michael Hoy, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be as brief as I can be, because I think there's been quite an extensive discussion tonight. And I would also say that Councillor McPherson probably said a lot of what I was going to say, and I thought that was a very good speech. I want to come back to the size of the proposed unitary authorities. I also was at the DCN conference last week. I sat down in a hall and I heard Jim McMahon speak, the MP, the Minister, and he stated quite clearly that 500,000 population is not a target, it's a figure. He said they will accept numbers under that. He said, we know our place is best and that he will listen to what we say. So if we, as a whole of Essex leaders and local authorities agree that 5 is best, he will listen to that and will almost certainly agree to that as long as we're in agreement. That's very clear. That was also addressed by Baroness Taylor. I think she's the Under Secretary of State. She said the same in another meeting. This is very clear. 350, 320, as long as we have the evidence for that, that will be accepted. What we don't yet have is the evidence. There are reports, there's Grant Thornton reports, which I know have been to the leaders of all groups. I don't know if they've shared those further down to their members. I have. So my group has shared the many, many ways that the unitaries could be formed. The outcome from that is that where we have stated here 5 is the preferred, it is the preferred to my mind, because that gives the sense of place, the sense of community, and the sense of democracy. It's the closest thing to keep us connected to our residents, and the residents should come first in all of this. Where we may, if we do not vote for these recommendations, I know Councillor O'Leary has asked this already, my view is that we'll isolate ourselves from the rest of Essex and leave both the leader and myself out of the room where these discussions are being made, which would give the worst situation possible for the Rochford residents. They will not get a say in how the new unitaries are formed. And I will say again, as has been said before, this is the preferred option. The evidence, when it's gathered, may show something different, and that would be brought back to this chamber, and we would discuss that then. And that could change the view on 5. It could be 4. It could be 6, perhaps. But it's important that we follow the evidence. But at this point in time, we have until the 21st of March to put this forward to government. They have not allowed us time to gather the evidence. This is an initial response, and that's how it should be seen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor James Newport, the leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I did want to come back on Councillor Booth's earlier comment about a different arrangement with councils, Brentwood, Malden and Chelmsford. So what's been very clear is that 1, they need to be willing partners. 2, we cannot set up new unitaries in a grouping that would allow another grouping to fail. So it has to be balanced across Essex. Essex has to work as a whole. So that is not ruled out. Everything is on the table, but at the moment, the data is still being collected and the evidence, and the work on that is going to take some time. And once that work comes back, all of these different proposals will be looked at. So no decision will be taken on that. The council will make the decision whether it wants to enter into that agreement. This is Labour's plan. I'm not an ostrich. I'm not going to put my head in the sand about this. We've got to deal with it and get the best outcomes for the residents. On the 5 unitary model, I've been very clear, and I've said this at Essex, that I support the 5 unitary model. For me, the proposal offers a balanced and efficient and locally accountable system of government, which is far preferable to the creation of large, unwieldy unitary councils. If we consider the principles of local democracy and representation, large unitary models will distance residents from the decision makers. It will dilute the local voice in the process. By contrast, smaller unitaries allow for better engagement with communities, ensuring that services reflect local priorities rather than being dictated to a remote administration. We need to look at the successes of smaller unitaries that have demonstrated that they can operate efficiently, delivering responsive services while maintaining financial stability. Southend has operated successfully as a unitary since 1998, proving that a compact structure with a clear focus can serve residents well. Just look at the state of the highways in Essex compared to Southend. We must acknowledge the financial and operational advantages of the 5 unitary model. The government has indicated a preference for unitary authorities with populations under 500,000 as they strike a balance between efficiency and local identity. Under our proposal, each new authority would serve between 300,000 and 400,000, a scale comparable to many existing successful unitaries such as York, Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole and Torbay. These councils have shown that mid-sized unitary authorities can deliver high-quality services while remaining financially viable. By contrast, a single large unitary covering vast parts of Essex would be at risk from inefficiency, excessive bureaucracy and increased costs associated with service disaggregation. Larger councils often struggle with service delivery due to their scale, as seen in Buckinghamshire. A 5 unitary structure ensures alignment with economic and social realities. Madam Chair, I will be supporting these recommendations. I think we need to get on with it. We need to move on. This is for an interim plan, nothing set in stone. Still looking at the evidence behind the future proposals. And once we get that, I think that members will have a clearer picture of where Rochford sits within the plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Members, we are now going to move to...
Point of order. When Councillor Newport recommended this to us on R4, he took out a large proportion of R4. Was that a motion or was that just changing it? Because if so, we haven't discussed whether it is a motion.
The monitoring officer will come back to you on this now.
Yes, Madam Chair, the report obviously written by the Chief Executive presents the recommendations. The leader obviously moved them with the recommendation for different. So we are debating what the leader moved and was seconded for debate and voting on by this council.
Thank you very much. So we're going to go forward for the vote by hand. Just one moment. I'm going to call each recommendation out because we're doing it one at a time. Councillor Belton.
I'd like to call for a recorded vote, please, Madam Chairman.
Oh, here we go. Councillor Belton, are you seeking a recorded vote on every recommendation, all 4?
Yes, please.
Right, okay. Okay, we'll get on with that. We'll come back to you in a moment.
Sorry, Madam Chair. If I may, I'd like a recorded vote on all the recommendations.
That's what we're doing.
Oh, okay.
Thank
I
you.
thought you just said it was recommendations.
So we're just going to adjourn for a couple of minutes because we need enough sheets to fill out for the recorded vote. You could take it as a 5-minute comfort break. Members, please come back to your positions. You've had 5 minutes. We're ready to go for the votes. Do we know where Councillor Steptoe is? Oh, was he? Lovely. Okay, members, so we're going to resume business. We are going to go for the recommendations. I'm going to read each one out and we're having a recorded vote on each recommendation. So R1, this council recognises the proposal from government for local government reform and devolution, requested by the upper tier authorities in Greater Essex, and will respond in a manner designed to secure the best outcome for Rochford District, given the framework and structure of the process. So Paul Birkinshaw is now going to conduct the recorded vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will read out members' names individually, starting with yourself and the Vice Chair, and ask members to indicate whether they're for, against or abstain from the recommendation which you have just read out. Can I ask members to ensure they have the microphone turned off when indicating their vote? But if they fail to do so, I don't intend to stop. The recorded votes will be published in the minutes. Councillor Page.
For.
Councillor McPherson. For. Councillor Belton.
For. Can members use their microphones, please, for the purpose of the recording?
I've just covered that, Chairman. Councillor Booth. So you were for?
I'm against the motion, but can people use the microphones, because we were told that that would be circulated?
No, that's because it's going on to order. The monitoring officer just clearly gave you a statement around that.
Councillor Booth.
Thank you.
Councillor Brewer. Councillor Capon. Councillor Constable.
Against.
Councillor Cripps. Councillor Efty. Councillor Eaves. Councillor Gooding. Councillor Hoy. Councillor Knight. Councillor Marriott. Councillor E. Mason. Councillor J. Mason. Councillor Myers. Councillor J. Newport. Councillor L. Newport. Councillor O'Leary. Councillor Sharp.
For.
Councillor P. Shaw. Councillor L. Shaw.
Against.
Councillor Squires Coleman. Councillor Stanley. Councillor Steptoe. Councillor Sutton. Councillor Ward. Councillor Webb. Councillor Williams. Councillor Wotton.
Yes.
Last but not least.
Is he not on the
Thank
list?
you. Against.
He is on the list.
Oh, he is at the bottom.
Just checking who's listening.
We'll just collate the numbers now, if you bear with. So, members, that is 22 for, 9 against, no abstention. So that motion is carried. I'm now going to move to R2. To approve the submission of the interim plan to government with the council's endorsement and logo applied.
Same again. Councillor Page. For. Councillor McPherson. For. Councillor Belton.
Against.
Councillor Booth. Councillor Brewer. Councillor Capon. Councillor Constable. Councillor Cripps. Councillor Efty. Councillor Eaves. Councillor Gooding. Councillor Hoy. Councillor Knight. Councillor Marriott. Councillor E. Mason. Councillor J. Mason. Councillor Myers. Councillor J. Newport. Councillor L. Newport. Councillor O'Leary. Councillor Sharp. Councillor P. Shaw. Councillor L. Shaw. Councillor Squires Coleman. Councillor Stanley. Councillor Steptoe. Councillor Sutton. Councillor Ward. Councillor Wotton.
Against.
So members, that's 16 for, 15 against. That motion is carried. Moving on to R3. To endorse the direction of discussion and develop plans as set out in the interim plan set out in Appendix 2. Ready?
Councillor Page. For. Councillor McPherson. For. Councillor Belton.
Against.
Councillor Booth. Councillor Brewer. Councillor Capon. Councillor Constable. Councillor Cripps. Councillor Efty. Councillor Eaves. Councillor Gooding. Councillor Hoy. Councillor Knight. Councillor Marriott. Councillor E. Mason. Councillor J. Mason. Councillor Myers. Councillor J. Newport. Councillor L. Newport. Councillor O'Leary. Councillor Sharp. Councillor P. Shaw. Councillor L. Shaw.
Against.
Councillor Squires Coleman. Councillor Stanley. Councillor Steptoe. Councillor Sutton. Councillor Ward. Councillor Webb. Councillor Williams. Councillor Wotton.
Against.
So members, that's 16 for, 15 against. That motion is carried. So we're moving on to R4. To support in principle the development of a 5-unitary model for Greater Essex.
Councillor Page.
For.
Councillor McPherson. For. Councillor Belton.
Against.
Councillor Booth. Councillor Brewer. Councillor Capon. Councillor Constable. Councillor Cripps. Councillor Efty. Councillor Eaves. Councillor Gooding. Councillor Hoy. Councillor Knight. Councillor Marriott. Councillor E. Mason. Councillor J. Mason. Councillor Myers. Councillor J. Newport. Councillor L. Newport. Councillor O'Leary. Councillor Sharp. Councillor P. Shaw. Councillor L. Shaw.
Against.
Councillor Squires Coleman. Councillor Stanley. Councillor Steptoe. Councillor Sutton. Councillor Ward. Councillor Webb. Councillor Williams. Councillor Wotton.
Against.
So members, that's 16 for, 15 against. That motion is carried. So members, now we're going on to item 7, capital and investment strategy. The report begins on page 7.1 of your agenda pack May I now invite David Dickinson, the Strategic Director, Finance S151 Officer, to introduce the report to us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to highlight a few key areas in the report. The Capital and Investment Strategy sets out the framework for the forthcoming financial year 2025-2026 for the capital and treasury activities of the Council. It sets out the prudential indicators against which the performance of the Council in these areas can be monitored throughout the year. The proposed arrangements are in accordance with statutory requirements, non-statutory guidance and best practice. At the February 2025 Council meeting, members agreed to reallocate the headquarter relocation budget to a more general asset and investment heading as part of agreeing the budget. In addition, 11.4 thousand for marketing of the Freight House was agreed, with this reduction being funded from the reallocation of the 1.5 for assets and investments, which was reduced to 1.489 million. This is reflected in this revised report. The 1.489 million assets and investments is unallocated and will be available to fund the revised asset strategy when it comes later in the year. Although the budget remains unallocated, this budget can be available for capital expenditure on the Freight House and other key emerging asset proposals. The 1.489 million has been budgeted to be spent in 2026-27, but spend can be accelerated into 2025-26 if required. Funding of the assets and investments allocation will be from the investment reserve. This report went to Audit and Governance Committee on the 20th of February, where it was agreed with an additional recommendation that, in light of local government reorganisation, the capital and investment strategy remain under constant review in light of spending within the local government reorganisation and any impacts on the Council's priorities, and is brought back to the committee for further consideration as necessary. The report includes a risk register that has been updated, and limits on lending to counterparties has increased from 5 million to 5 million from 3 million. Interest rates are forecast to decrease over the next few years, which will impact the interest earned on cash. Some banks, although they have high enough credit rating, have been excluded on ethical grounds, including banks linked to China and banks in the Middle East. This will have limited impact on the Council's Treasury strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now can I invite the Leader of the Council, Councillor James Newport, to make the recommendations, move the recommendations.
Can we just amend the spelling mistake on recommendation 1? Third line down. Priorities as is not brought. Just can we, because if we're doing a recommendation, can we just make it correct? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chair. On 7.1, 1.3 at the bottom, it says Brentwood. I'm sure that's a mistake and should be Rochford.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Councillor Newport. We've got another one. Councillor Sharp. Can you put your mic
to the thank you, to the section 151 officer. On the chart, it shows the total programme cost at 1248, whereas that is not the total of the subtotals. Surely it should be 2952, which is the total, to balance the amount of funding. So I don't understand what that figure of 1248 is.
Councillor Sharp, what page are you working from, please?
I am working from item 7, which is 7.3. It's the chart of the figures.
Here, on here. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, you can just repeat the question.
I don't on the total programme cost of 1248, I really don't understand what that figure is.
Councillor Sharp, can you stand up in the chamber,
Yeah, I beg your
please?
pardon, sorry. Because it is not the combined total of the subtotals, and surely it must equate with the total funding of 2952. Have I misunderstood something?
Yeah, it should equal the 2952.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. And Councillor John Mason, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Dickinson made reference to £1.489 million, and in particular drew our attention to it being in the capital programme, or words to that effect, in 26-27, but indicated it could be brought forward. Could I ask Mr. Dickinson, through you, Chair, to explain why it was put in 26-27 anyway? Thank you.
Please go ahead.
In the original budget, there was the 1.5 million 26-27, and there's been nothing that's come forward to identify the need to bring it forward as yet. So the idea is to wait for the asset strategy review, the asset strategy to come back, and then we could accelerate the expenditure. But the idea is just to leave it there for now until there's a bit more clarity on when on the spend profile of anything that would be agreed.
Okay, Councillor.
Can I seek clarification on that, if I may? So, if I understood that answer correctly, Chair, then we put it in the budget in 26-27 because there was no need to spend it. Is that correct?
No, it was originally there to fund the headquarter relocation, but there's nothing to bring the budget forward, so it stayed in the 26-27 budget. It could have been brought forward, but there was no amount that could be brought forward, so it was left there until there's clarification on what the money can be spent on, and then that adjustment can happen through capital acceleration. Same with pushing it back to future years where will be slippage. It's just we don't have that clarity.
We can go and debate this, please.
Okay, I was a bit bewildered by that, Madam Chairman, because members obviously decided to debate without moving the recommendations and the report. So, Madam Chair, on page 7.1, I'll move recommendations R1 with amending the word bruh to brought. As Councillor Shaw pointed out earlier, that just slight spelling mistake. And R2. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, that's right.
Thank you very much. And can I now invite Councillor Hoy to second? And would you like to reserve your right or speak?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I second the recommendations and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
So, members, I'm going to open this up to debate. If you'd like to show your hands if you'd like to speak. So, Councillor FD.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's just a couple of questions, really. The budget can be brought forward. What's the mechanism for that to happen? And also the headquarters relocation that was renamed to the, what was it called? The assets and investment unallocated. But going back to my question at the budget meeting, where is the money going to come from to our headquarters? Still nothing in there. I can see this. You can explain where the money is going to come from to our headquarters. Thank you.
Mr. Dickinson, are you going to come in?
One thing just to clarify, this report is focused predominantly on the funding of the capital programme, and the capital programme was agreed as part of the budget process. But it will, if we, as recommendations come forward for spending that 1.5, which is from a reserve which is currently held, then then adjustment can be made to that, and an agreement to accelerate that spend into 25-26.
Sorry, Madam Chairman, just a clarification. I take it that go to the Strategy and Finance Committee, would it? Or you don't know yet? Yeah.
Right, thank you. Is there any other hands in the room, please? Councillor Belton.
Thank you. Following on from my colleagues, Councillor FD and Councillor Mason's point, this is exactly why we brought this up at budget, because now, if money needs to come forward, it's going to be delayed because it needs to go through a committee process. It needs to be debated at committee, and then we need to go through this whole rigmarole again. There's already been a press release come out from Rochford District Council, a further one come out from Councillor Newport that £500,000 or more will be spent on the Freight House this year, which is what we asked for in budget. It's what was in Councillor Newport's slideshow. So I question why we're seeing this again and why, despite publicly saying we're spending £500,000 this year, no one still brought it forward with a commitment. I'm against the strategy because I think there should be money in this financial year committed to our assets and not just the assets listed on that page. Recommendation 1 is a brainer, that goes without saying, but recommendation 2, I don't support it now and I didn't support it in the budget. Thank you.
Any other hands, please? Councillor Wotton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the difficulty here is we know we're all focusing on one particular budget line here, and it is about the Freight House. And it is a shame in some ways that we don't actually analyse other budget lines. But let's talk about the Freight House. If I take Mr Dickinson's point that he's just made, and I accept very genuinely, about you can move things around in columns, there's actually no point in having columns, because actually one column would do the job, because you just adjust it as you spend the money. I think we need to remind ourselves once again that a budget is a vision. It isn't about actual expenditure. But the Freight House has been talked about. You will recall, members, that there was quite robust discussions in budget. There was certainly very cordial, but nevertheless robust discussions at the following week's audit meeting. And my understanding was quite clear then that there would be movement of funds, and I seem to recall the figure of 500,000, to the first column, because as you quite rightly say, Mr Dickinson, things can be moved around. And I just get a little bit concerned that we cover up by saying, oh, a feasibility study is being conducted. We know that that can be a means to just delay and prevaricate. But around the budget time, there were videos, there were talks about what a valuable asset the Freight House is.
Councillor Wotton, we are discussing the capital investment strategy here. We're not going into specifics.
I just happen to be talking about one particular
We're not going into specifics, please.
Well, I think we're talking about the asset strategy.
We were talking about the capital investment strategy.
Yeah,
we're not going and finalising
absolutely. And that's exactly what I am talking about.
If you stick to the subject, please, that would be
I'm sticking
appreciated.
precisely, Madam Chair, to the subject, but I just happen to be talking at one level of detail in relation to the Freight House. What I will say on this side is we would be opening the Freight House. We would open it tomorrow, subject to the regulatory controls being in place. So why don't the administration actually get on and open the building? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wotton. Is there anybody else wanting to speak on this? Councillor Hoy, did you want to speak? Yeah, we've got no one else that would like to speak, so you can come in because you reserved your right.
I can't see behind me, so I don't know if anyone else has indicated. I'll just be very brief. I'll be obviously voting for both recommendations. Just in answer to the very specific points made by Councillor Wotton, the Freight House is online to be open for meanwhile use. The budget is in place to do that, and any funds required for any further work will be taken out of the £1.489 million, as already said. But for the Freight House to be opened, it has to have regulatory work done on it, and that's being looked at the moment. I know Councillor McPherson is leading the task and finish group on the Freight House very ably and reports back regularly, and I'm sure he reads the reports from his representatives on that committee. But yes, the funding for it is there and it will be opened. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor James Newport, would you like to wind up for us now, please? Can we just have one meeting here? Councillor James Newport, can you wind up for us, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Conservative group are fixated with the Freight House, yet they closed it. And that's, that's all they talk about. And there's actually work in progress to reopen it. And as Councillor Hoy has already said, that's being led by the working group with Councillor McPherson, and I'd just like to thank her very much for all that hard work. And it'll be open as soon as possible. So I'll be supporting recommendation R1 and R2, and I'd like to thank the officer as well for his hard work in putting this report together. Thank you.
So, members, I'm going to take this to the vote now. I'm hoping that we will take it on block, R1 and R2 together, if everybody's happy with that. Now, I'd like to take them together. That's okay then, if you don't want to. I'm just saying, as chair, I am going to take R1 and R2 with advice together on block. So it's an instruction to you all to understand how we're just about to vote, please. Thank you. So, members, all those in
Madam Chair, can I
favour.
have a point of clarification. Could we
Such thing as a point
could we
of
have a ruling from the
clarification.
monitoring officer?
There's no such thing as a point of clarification, Councillor Wotton. You know that as well. So I'm going to vote now, please. Members, all those in favour of recommendation R1 and R2, can you show your hands? And all those against, please. And any abstentions? So there's 17 votes for, 5 abstentions. That motion has been carried. Thank you. So, members, we're going to item 8, proposed amendments to the Council's Constitution. The report begins on page 8.1 of your agenda, and Mr Birkinshaw is now going to give us some advice around this.
Not advice, Chairman, just a quick introduction. Obviously, this brings forward the report from the working group. Just to put on record the thanks to that working group, Councillor FD, Lambourne, James Newport and Vilma Wilson. This is the second report which has been brought to Council from the work of that group recently. Members will recall the debate previously. Hope the report sets out clearly the recommendations which to amendments to the articles of the Constitution and to the procedure rules, but nothing further to add to the report.
Thank you very much, Mr Birkinshaw. So I will then go on to say, in the absence of the Chairman and Vice Chairman of Audit and Governance Committee, can I ask Councillor James Newport, who is a member of the Constitution Working Group, to move the recommendations, and I believe Councillor O'Leary, who is a member of the Audit Committee, will second it. So, Councillor James Newport, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very happy to move the recommendations on page 8.1, R1 and R2. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor O'Leary, would you like to second this, and would you like to reserve your right or speak now?
No, I'll second that, and I will very briefly speak, just to say that I am happy to second these proposed amendments to the Council's Constitution, and happy to report that these were unanimously approved at the most recent Audit Committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Leary. Members, I'm going to open this up for debate now. Councillor FD.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've just got a couple of points on this. Being a member of the working group, it's been interesting, but we do sometimes have some differences of opinion, and so I'd like to put them to the full council to get their votes and see which way it goes. So, first one is there's a lot of questions out about substitutions. So that's 6.3, and it goes from, item 8 It's 8.42 and it goes from 4 to 4.6. So the argument for no substitutions is put forward by in the Constitution that no substitutions be allowed as continuity of membership is important. Right, the argument I put against that is there's usually only one member of each group who is a member of the working group. The schedule of working groups is sometimes ad hoc, and the members may have holidays, hospital appointments, or may have a clash or have an emergency. So a member of a working group should update their group so members are knowledgeable of the subject matter of any given working group, so continuity can be maintained by any group member. So each political group can be kept informed. And I also think minutes should be published on that as well. And that's my argument for that. And the other one is the webcasting. This council has no legal obligation to have a webcast out there. It's very nice to have it, and when it works, it's great. But a lot of time it does fail. And stopping to have votes if we find out it fails I think is going to not be useful to do. And it's something that's not a legal thing that we have to do, and people can get the minutes after the meeting. So, in my opinion, I don't think we should be putting a webcast in that if it fails, we have a vote, stop the meeting, have a vote, and decide if we can carry on with the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor FD. Can I ask Paul Birkinshaw to come back on that?
Yes, Madam Chair, just try to obviously respond, having worked with the Constitution Working Group. On the issue of working groups, I think it is an issue actually which the leader's raised and wishes to look at. I would suggest that is an issue which the Constitution Working Group can look at as part of its next work. I think there's broader issues as well as membership. The amendments around substitutes and taking them out of the council procedure rules, which is the amendment which you're asked to approve this evening, is due to that simply being a duplication of what's in the committee and subcommittee procedure rules. Obviously, we don't permit substitutes at full council, and therefore it's not felt to be appropriate to be in the council procedure rules. The issue of the webcasting provision in the council procedure rules was an issue that Councillor FD did raise at the working group and expressed similar concerns this evening around the merits of that provision. As Monitoring Officer, I believe it's an important provision, but obviously members can determine. I think obviously Councillor FD raises those points, Chair. I'm not clear in terms of whether they are formal amendments to the recommendation. It will be helpful to clarify, but I would suggest the working group's issue is one that merits further consideration, so I would advise, Chair, that there may be some difficulty in Council determining that this evening because you're not able to give proper consideration to it. The amendment which Councillor FD may wish to move to remove the provision of webcasting that is proposed to be added is a more straightforward one, I think could be dealt with this evening. If members wish to accede to the amendment, that's obviously for them to determine. But if you're happy, Councillor FD, I would have a bit of difficulty with taking an amendment on working groups this evening, but I will take that to the next meeting of the Constitution Working Group to have a look at.
Okay, I'm happy to put an amendment forward about the webcasting.
Do I have a seconder for the amendment that Councillor FD wants to remove the webcasting failure, item 26? So we'll open that amendment
Chair,
to debate.
As this has been sprung on us, could we have an adjournment for 10 minutes so our groups can discuss this? Thank you.
Yep, okay, that's fair enough. Yep, we'll go for a pause for 10 minutes here. Yeah. Speak on that. Okay, members, if anyone would like to debate this, put your hand up. Councillor Belton.
Just for clarity in the room, because I just want to be sure, we're not asking for the webcasting to be removed. What Councillor FD asked for was that if the webcasting isn't working, that it doesn't need to go to a vote of that council in order to carry the meeting on. So can we just clarify exactly what the amendment is so we know what we're debating, please? Thank you. I think Paul is aware.
The amendment, Madam Chair, for Canon 8.61 is to remove the proposed procedural 26, which is headed webcasting failure. That says that at meetings of the council held in the Civic Suite are webcast on the council's website. If on any occasion where the council has advised the public that the meeting will be webcast but is unable to do so due to a technical failure, voting members present at the meeting shall consider and determine, having regard to the business to be conducted, whether the meeting should continue or be postponed. Councillor FD is proposing that that proposed procedural be removed.
So anyone else would like to speak on this? Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just very briefly, I didn't sit on the committee or on the working group or on the audit committee. My understanding is that this was unanimously put forward by the audit committee, and I will be supporting the recommendations of the audit committee and not the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Councillor James Mason, John Mason, do apologise.
I'm in a good mood. Plenty of latitude. Thank you, Madam Chair. I understood during the adjournment that the reason that this addition to the Constitution is to take account of a statute in the future that permits hybrid meetings. Well, we're not there yet. There isn't a statute providing the conduct of hybrid meetings with decisions. So I'd like to sustain the present, and I'll be voting for the amendment because as and when such statute comes forward, we can consider it. And so we should. But let's not try and get ahead of it, particularly as we don't know whether the statute and how it's going to come forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor James Newbold.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't like to disagree with Councillor John Mason, but we can run hybrid meetings. We just can't vote in hybrid meetings. So members are able to participate, and we do successfully at Essex County Council and have done for a long time. So there's nothing wrong with this council moving forward into the 21st century and not holding ourselves back, waiting for a little bit of legislation to come out, which we don't actually need if members wish to participate and not vote. So it will have its benefits. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak against the amendment? You kind of came in earlier. Right. Okay. Go on then.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just following on from Councillor Newpoint's point, just for some clarity, if this amendment passes, does that mean we can't do hybrid meetings anymore, as just explained by Councillor Newport? Thank you.
Councillor Birkinshaw. Councillor Birkinshaw, I'm getting tired. That is just such a faux pas. I do apologise. Paul Birkinshaw, would you like to answer Councillor Belton, please?
Obviously, if the webcasting works, we could do the hybrid. If it fails, then obviously we need to consider there is provisions obviously within here that recognises the excellent equipment that the council now has and permits people to ask questions remotely. So that would obviously not be possible. So if we had obviously somebody that determined to ask the question from home, we weren't able to do that. I think the provision really is just there for members to make an informed decision rather than being forced into a course of action. But hybrid meetings would be possible if it was still working.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to take that to the vote. So all those in favour of the amendment, please. And all those against, please. No abstentions, I don't. Yeah, anyone abstaining? Councillor Eaves. So we've got 13 for, 16 against, 1 abstention, so that motion has failed. We are now going back to the substantive motion. Yeah, if there's nobody who wants to speak on this, Councillor Newport can wind up. No? Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to, nothing more to add.
Brilliant. So, members, we're going to go to the vote on that. All those in favour, please. All those against, please. So we have 21 for, 9 abstentions, none against. So that motion is now carried. Thank you very much. So members, we're on item 9, review of outside bodies and partnerships. The report begins on page 9.1 of your agenda packs. I will now invite Councillor FD, the Chairman of the Scrutiny and Performance Committee, to introduce this report and move the recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank the members who responded to the survey that went out, taken over the last two years to put this together. Councillor Webb engaged with the officers as chairman of the actual working group for that meeting, and there really is there's really only one recommendation that's any different, which is the Hockley Community Association to remove one council representative from it, and I'm happy to recommend these recommendations for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor FD. And I understand, Councillor Webb, you'd like to second this motion, and are you reserving your right?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Happy to second this motion, and I reserve my right to speak at the end. Thank you.
Members, anyone would like to speak on this? I'm opening it up for debate. Councillor Elizabeth Brewer.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to question R3, please, where it reads, be undertaken biannually. I thought we agreed that that was going to go to 3 years. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor FD, do you want to come back on that for Councillor Brewer?
I'm trying to remember back to the meeting. I think we did agree 3 years, which was a bit. Mike, do you want to answer that?
Councillor Webb, you'd like to answer that? Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So originally it was going to be biannually, but because this was quite a large workload for the officers, we felt that this piece of work did not need to be completed biannually, but could be done on a 3-yearly cycle. Thank you.
Councillor Brewer.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's 9.1, and there was just a spelling error. It said very 3 years instead of every.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just like to ask that the Essex Coastal Forum, that I would like that to be included with the flooding forum that we had, rather than a separate matter for the committee to decide. Could I have that as a motion, please?
Madam Chairman. Right.
So, Councillor Stanley, Mr Birkinshaw will answer you separately on that because he hasn't got the answer for that. Okay. Councillor Joanne McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it was just for clarity from my memory for the Scrutiny and Performance Committee meeting. We did discuss biannually only because of LGR and devolution coming along, whether we needed to review it or not biannually. But I agree, I think that we did then decide for the 3 years, so that might be the confusion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lorraine Shaw, please.
Thank you. For Councillor Stanley's benefit, that we can't put them together because they're two different committees with two different sections of people, and I will declare an interest because I'm chairman of both of them. But so we cannot put them together as one entity. Essex Coastal and Essex Flooding Board are completely different. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, just say that's obviously helpful from Councillor Mrs Shaw, but I will provide a response to Councillor Stanley as well, just to reiterate, no doubt, the point that you've helpfully made. Thank you.
Anyone else would like to come in on the debate, please? Councillor James Newport, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so I've got a... Sorry, this is quite a confusing report, actually. But on recommendation R4, I'd just like some clarity where it says representatives appointed to outside bodies and partnerships required to report back to the final meeting each year. So is that a verbal report back or is that in writing? I'd like some more detail of how the assessment of these working groups have happened. I mean, I'm on these outside bodies because I'm on one outside body, and to be honest, I don't think it achieves much. So how was it actually? I was trying to look through, and what sort of metrics did we look at and value to the council? Can anyone give me an explanation on that? Because
Councillor Efting, if you wouldn't mind coming back in.
Confusing in the report.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. If I remember correctly, Madam Chair, sorry. If I remember correctly, this started a fair few years ago, and surveys were sent out to all members who were on outside bodies to come back with their thoughts on the outside bodies, and they were sent also information was gathered from the outside bodies themselves, what they thought of members going. And then it came back to the officers, and then Councillor Webb ran a working party and come to the conclusions that are in there and reported back to Scrutiny and Performance. Sorry, Councillor Webb.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hoy.
Thank you. Just one query and one correction, please. On page 9.8, it states that the Crouch Valley Coastal Community, the 2034-35 appointee is Councillor Michael Hoy. There are two appointees. It's Councillor Michael Hoy and Councillor Joe McPherson for that. And the second question would be if it is felt that any of these committees could report back to a different committee for a better outcome, does that have to go to full council to be changed, or can that be done within a agreement of committees or officers or chairs of committees? Thank you.
Mr Birkinshaw, can you answer that?
Yeah, I think obviously we would look to align the outside bodies with the remits of the committees. Many of them are cross-cutting, and certainly the remits are. So that should provide us scope to adjust them if needed. But obviously some of the permanent adjustments may require amendments. So it depends what the specific... Sorry, largely I think it would be possible. What would be? Sorry.
Sorry, could you just state how committee reporting could be changed outside of the full council? Is it possible? So currently we are told that they are appointed by a certain committee. Can that be changed outside of a full council meeting by officers or by chairs of committees? Or does it have to go through a full council meeting?
I don't really want to waste time finding through the specific provisions in the Constitution, but certainly we can bring forward provisions to make sure that they can be changed and the council has effective and efficient arrangements in place. I can't answer the question directly at this time. Any questions of detail, welcome to beforehand.
Anyone else like to speak on this? Councillor Lisa Newport.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask, did all councillors that were sitting on outside bodies at the time actually feed back in so that we've got the right information? I don't know who wants to answer that or if someone wants to get back to me at another stage. Thank you.
Councillor Efty, do you want to come back in that?
I remember feeding back in this a couple of years ago when I was an outside body. Can't make councillors do something if they haven't seen it or really don't want to do it. So we did ask a couple of times for councillors to please feed back.
Thank you, Councillor FD. So just for clarification, it was just what was the uptake, the percentage? I know you can't make somebody do something, but what was the percentage of response to that survey, please? Thank you.
I don't have that information at hand, so I'll ask the officer to write to you with that information. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll send that out separately. Councillor Lorraine Shaw, and then I will go to the vote.
For the Essex Flood Board, the representative for RDC gets all the slides and copies of the minutes, and so it's appropriate that they come, and they're not P&C, so it can come back to this council. Whether it's reported back, I don't know, because I'm Essex, I'm not on that. So if the representative doesn't push it back, I can't say why. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, we're now going to go to the motion. And we are recommendations R1, R2, R3 in your agenda pack and R4. You get those up in front of you, pages 9.1 to 9.2. I'd like to take it all on block, please. Councillor Ward.
Yeah. Has R5 as well?
There's no R5.
That's in a different report.
Okay, thank you.
I've just called the pages to you, 9.1, 9.2. It's R1, R2, R3, R4. All those in favour, please. Cool. Members, that's unanimous. That's carried. So at this point, members, we're coming up to 2 minutes to 10. Does anyone want to move a motion to extend the meeting? No. Yeah. So with 1 minute to go, we're going to defer all of the other matters to the next meeting. So at that point, I'm going to close the meeting at 21:59 p.m. Thank you very much.